Hey there, everybody. Welcome back. Another episode here with the War Game Central, Zach Burley. This intro will be really short. There was a great conversation surrounding episode one, the tactics and such that I used, and some of the mistakes that I made there um, in a friendly way, talking about the use of cavalry and maybe a little bit too aggressive with them early. I liked what one commenter had to say, talking about um, getting high numbers of cavalry together rather than just kind of small piecemeal and then putting them in key locations rather than just kind of throwing them in front of enemy units whenever possible. So it's probably a little bit too aggressive with the cavalry, and that set up a lot of things there. But there was a lot of great discussion around it. So with this video as well, make sure you drop into the comments and let me know what you think. So we'll go ahead and jump right into things here. And this is beginning where we left off at the beginning of turn 4, I think. Yeah, beginning of turn 4. I played 2 turns, and of course, we start off with the Union Night March, which was incredibly fortunate for them to get. Minimum 3 die roll here, so they are going to have 4 movement, which is going to send them right along their way to Columbia. They'll go again with the wagons. They roll a 5, which is modified to a 6, and that'll be plenty to send them all the way across. Not even just the Duck River, but also the Rutherford Creek for most of them. So already the wagons are mostly safe, it seems. Chalmers is up here still sitting with 2 strength points with Rucker. But, you can kind of see there are some contingents here to stop them from attacking the wagons. Plus, it would be an even fight, and Stanley would have a +1 for tactical. So it's a thing. It's like, oh, they're just sitting ducks, but they're actually pretty hardy overall if you've got a leader stacked with them. Now, I will say this is not legal here. Stanley has to be stacked with one of his units. He can't just command the wagons independently. So I'll correct this later on. Um, this was legal in the sense that Stanley could have been stacked with another unit nearby and commanded them. So that it probably wouldn't have affected their movement too much, but they can't be stacked alone. So I'll solve this later on, but just be wary of that whenever you're playing. First initiative, won by the Union. I forgot to add the fatigue to the wagon train, so we're getting up to that. Schofield is going to activate Wagner, just 2 movement points. That'll kind of send him on this little maneuver along the Hampshire Pike. Just threatening here. I mean, the Confederates may not know exactly what's going on. The Union is kind of thinking, well, if we can set it up in time, we would realistically like to bring Wagner in here, because the original thought was, well, Wilson's going to get rid of Forrest, and then he's going to pin Lee for a full flank. Doesn't have enough strength to do it. Wagner most certainly would. Next, one by the Union against. This is 4 consecutive, 2 from the night march and 2 regularly. Schofield, once again, will activate Wagner. Gets a much better 6, which is going to send him along exactly where he wants to be. 3 remaining movement points. And Forrest will retreat because he knows he can just get a regular attack off and it would not be great. So he is going to cav retreat, but with just a half a strength point, it's going to have no effect on his movement. So Forrest will skedaddle away. And Wagner is now sitting here with 2 remaining movement points. So I did above right that it's Schofield to Wagner. So Schofield should have transferred, and I just forgot to in the moment. So there is Schofield. So he's still got 2 movement points, so he's going to decide to use them rather than risk an assault or whatever else wants to save as much. So he's going to attack on the march at normal. So it's going to be +4 for a full flank. You've got everything covered here with nothing taken off. -1 for artillery because they have 2, and it's going to end it with a +3. Tactical is nothing here. There is no terrain. So the Union rolls a 6, a big old 6, which is going to take them to 9. And the Confederates roll a 2, which is a +7. And as you can see, I say they are yikes. That's about all that you can say in that situation. Just a complete destruction of Johnson's division here. It's going to result in an A for the Union, so just advance, not even fatigue, and 2 losses, and a disorganization and demoralization and retreat. So Lee will have to run away, and because he's retreating here into an enemy ZOI, there was no way for him to get out of a ZOI. He has to retreat through one. There is no road connecting this next territory here, so he is going to lose one more strength. This is actually a strength loss of 3. He was at 7 when we started. He is now down to, he will be down in just a second to 4. Should be that one there. You can see now 4, 3 effective strength because he's disorganized and demoralized. Thankfully for him, he can then get away without any more losses, but it is a very bad retreat, and Schofield will enter the hex with Wagner. So Schofield here and Wagner with a double action around Pillow Place, dispersing Forrest cavalry, and then dispatching Lee and Johnson right on the edge of the Little Bigby Creek with help from segments of the 23rd Corps and Whitaker in support. So a really solid attack. That's what you want to do in this game, set up full flanks and take full advantage. So Lee is out of commission for the time being. And you're really seeing things start to shift here. I mean, Hood is just now entering with Cheatham's corps. Stewart's contingent is just beginning to show up. The rest of Lee's group is very far behind thanks to the rain last turn. So they have, basically the only harm to Columbia right now has just been sent away, and they have time to set things up while the Confederates' main column arrives. So they're in a really nice spot. Confederates win this. They're going to activate Stevenson with 7 movement points and send him running down. He's got 4 movement points remaining, and of course Capron will retreat away and take down 1 movement point through this cav retreat, and he'll join up with Wilson. So that leaves Stevenson with a little bit more to cross over the East Fork of the Big Bigby Creek, and Stevenson again will activate 6 movement points, a very good haul from him. 4 movement points remaining, and Wilson will try and slow them down some more, which he will do very effectively. Rolls a 7. He's sitting there with a nice chunk of troops as well, too. So it's going to reduce them by 3 movement points, which will basically bring Stevenson to a halt. That'll send Wilson back behind the cover of the Little Bigby Creek in the Union formation there. Union back, they're going to activate Wood down here and get him along the way. They're not in much of a rush anymore because everything is pretty much past the river where they want it to be. Everything else is just kind of icing on the top. Cheatham's going to activate Claiborne and Bate. Only 3 movement points. Very disappointing amount. Bate's actually going to have to burn one because he can't even make it into that hex. So Confederates again. Cheatham's going to activate the entire corps. He rolls another 1. You can see that here. A 1 and a 1. 2 1s in a row for the minimum movement allowance of 3. So at least he's going to get to move everyone the full amount this time, but huge wasted opportunity here to really get Cheatham's corps into. I mean, you're saying they're sitting here. If they roll 7 and 7, or 8 and 8 is their maximum. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, and then 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. I mean, they've still got 3 movement remaining here if they roll 2 maximums. Instead, they roll 2 minimums, and they're not even to Mount Pleasant, really. So, massive case of the slows. Wood, once again, 5 movement points. He'll make his way up to the eastern end of this flank. Remember, the map is kind of tilted this way. So the east end of this formation, you could already start to see the Union kind of forming a little horn or horseshoe here around Columbia. Union again. You can activate Waters, who is trailing back here. He just gets 2, kind of piddling along. Activate Waters again, 5 movement points, a little bit better, and that will bring him right in line. So you can see here exactly what's built up in the movement that they're getting here around this defensive position. Clayton now will activate 4 movement points. That'll send him along to Mount Pleasant. Hatch will now activate for the Union. He was kind of the lone guy left out there from that attack very early on. 11 movement points will end pretty nicely for him. And now Hatch is in position to activate himself and Croxton, which he will do. He's going to get 8 movement points. Croxton's going to come around and kind of sit here at the tail end of this formation. And Hatch is going to come around and fill a hole in over here, which makes it pretty difficult for any forces to, penetrate in this eastern side along the Central Alabama Railroad. So a pretty solid defense here. They've got this end of the duck closed up. This end obviously closed up here, and then this formation. And right now they're thinking, well, let's try and hold them. We can talk about a major battle at the doorstep of Nashville, but let's try and hold them right here. We've got the numbers, we've got the time. If they keep moving slowly, we might even be dug in, and we may be very hard to dislodge. So the Union right now is thinking, let's force a major battle south of Columbia and possibly dispatch the Confederates before this campaign even begins. See the hubris in that thinking. Stuart now, who's way the heck over here, he's going to make his way over, and he's just going to position himself north of the wagons because there's no real good terrain to get to them except through over here along Carter's Creek. And this is just to prevent Chalmers from running in and causing any trouble. They've got so many activations. They've activated so many times. They're down here in Murfreesboro activating Van Cleve. Finally, the Confederates get one back, and Cheatham is going to activate Brown, who's going to kind of make his way around along the main road. Stuart again, this Stuart, the Confederate Stuart, he is going to kind of run parallel with the Waynesboro Pike. This is going to be the Confederate counterpunch to what the Union is doing. The USA says, I'm good at this point. The wagons have moved. Everybody else is in their positions. I don't want to move anybody that could entrench. So Stuart will go again. He's got 7 movement points. I believe he had 7 last time as well. He did. So this is a maximum for him pretty much. Another 7, which will take him just about to the Columbia Pike. And now you can kind of see what the alternative here is for the Confederates. This line looks very strong, especially if they can get Schofield around to here. Everybody's entrenched. They've got the terrain. The weak point, if they want to assault, is down here. Waters is only on 2. So if they want to go that way, but of course, as many of you know who have played this game multiple times or seen it played, there is another way around, and that's exactly what they're going to do. Ross now, just moving the cav ahead in an attempt to support. The Union is going to continue just figuring out their defensive lines around Murfreesboro while they've got the activations. You might as well. As you can see here, they're just going to take these positions and kind of ring around Murfreesboro should that ever come under threat. Ross now, all the way on the other end, is going to take his second activation of the turn, and he is going to make this big lunging move around the outside and face off against Hatch, who does have superior numbers. USA passes again. This is a moment where Hatch probably could have tried to dispatch Ross. He had the movement to do it. He would have been exhausted, but he could have taken. Even Croxton could have done it as well, and of course they could have acted in conjunction and taken both sides of him. It was not too big of a deal, but I think a little bit of aggressiveness here might have paid off. Chalmers, 6 movement points, very low for Cav, and he's going to make his way down and around. You'll see exactly why, because he's going to activate again. 8 more movement points. He's going to snake his way down through this difficult terrain and sit right down in Spring Hill. So he's going to be in clear terrain here, which is really great for the artillery piece that he has. This mounted cavalry, or the wagon artillery, the pulled behind wagon artillery. So that'll be a really nice defensive position for him, and this is really the only threat the Union have to their line of communication to Nashville. Stevenson now, 4 movement points, not much. It's going to send him around. It will exhaust him for next turn, but he wants to get off the road, connect with Lee. Clayton's going to do the same thing. 3 movement points is very poor. I think he may even activate again. He will, and he'll get 6 movement points this time. And he's just going to come around and kind of sit in this area as well. He wants to get his corps kind of back together, his chain of command solidified, also to protect this unit here, because if they were to run up and take this guy one-on-one with no retreat path, they could completely eliminate Johnson from the map, which would just be detrimental. So they want to secure Lee, but also offer this threat on the west side of town, because they know Cheatham's corps is just going to battering ram their way into Schofield at the Little Bigby Creek. So there's no sense in having that many troops there. USA pass. Forrest is going to activate now. He's going to activate Jackson, who is going to make his way around and sit with Ross, combining his and both sides now will pass at the end of turn 4. So your random event is fortuitously the enhanced move, and it's going to be for the Union. So it just seems to get better and better for the Union. All of their movement allowances are going to be increased by 1, which is pretty crazy. More Union Cav show up in the Union Manpower enhancement, and then leader transfer here. Forrest is going to transfer down, and you can already see a showdown happening here where Forrest is going to try and pry the door open for Stewart to make a runaround. Wilson is going to transfer as well to even up the um, tactical modifiers. Union reinforcements will receive 1 set, which is just Hammond, and the Confederate reinforcements are going to get the remainder 6 sets. They roll a big old 6 here. So Stuart's all come in, and that's pretty much all that's left. First initiative won by the Union. Schofield is going to activate Wagner to get him in position where he wants to be, and that is right over here on the west side of Columbia. So they've got all this area closed up. They can't cross here. This is a minor river, so they can't cross. So they have now completed this horseshoe. They would like another unit or two to really finish this off. Now, more is not really necessary now, but it was keeping Chalmers out. But more down here would make them feel a little bit better. This area here is now fortified. These two have got breastworks, as does more. So, very steady line that they have built, and one that they hope will hold against the oncoming Confederates. The rebels will activate. Buford's going to activate both of the cav units within his range. Buford will transfer around, and then he'll make his little lunge himself. You can see him threatening these eastern fords. So with the geography of this area, there's really only 2 places besides Columbia to cross. The fords here around Williamsport, and then on the western side of the Natchez Trace, and then east of Columbia, there's lots of fords down here. And it's a real vulnerability because the Union just don't have enough troops to hold them off everywhere. In a one-on-one fight, the Union are even, and maybe even could fight this out and possibly win if things go their way. But defending this terrain is just not enough. They can't stretch themselves out in order to, on even strength, fight all 3 Confederate corps. 3 corps here. 1 goes for Columbia, 1 crosses in the west, and 1 crosses in the east, and you're going to find yourself outflanked, and your position around Columbia is untenable. So that's really the idea in most of these games, I find. Crossland will complete out this activation and kind of just make his way around. Lots of movement here. Wood is going to activate for the Union, and he is going to make this run here. So he gets 4 movement points. If Stanley were where he was supposed to be, which is not over here with the wagons, he could have gotten 5, which is very important. So Wood is breaking out of this line and moving offensively towards Stewart. Why? Well, the thinking here for the Union is, looky here, we've got Stewart in wide open space. No one can come to his aid, most likely depending on a big roll or 2 activations in a row. They think if they can just get lucky with another activation when he's up here, they can run up to Stewart, and then they can send, because he's only got 8, so even Croxton could provide a full flank, because he's at least a 4th of the size. They could get a full flank on Stewart and do to Stewart what they did to Lee. And now you've got 2 divisions heavily crippled, and that's going to really hamper what the Confederates can do. So he stepped out, but he rolled 1 less than he needed. He needed really to sit here. He wanted more than that, obviously, but he really wanted to sit adjacent to Stewart. So he's got 1 less. So now remember, Stanley can't be here. It's not legal for him to be here. So if I had noticed this earlier, Stanley would have been with someone else, which would have given him enough space to activate Wood and give him the 1 more that he would have needed. So you're going to begin to see things unravel here for the Union. The Confederates will respond with an activation of their own. Forrest is going to activate everyone but Crossland, and he's got 8 movement points. So Buford is going to slide around here on Hatch, and Forrest will come in with the rest. They go for another activation. They don't even try and attack here immediately. They're going to wait and get the next activation, which they are very lucky to get. They had 7 movement points remaining, so they could have done a normal attack here with a full flank, but he decides to wait and gets the forced assault instead. which does succeed, and he'll come in with a big +5. One for tactical, Forest versus Hatch, 4 for the flank, 2 for assault, 1 for it being an assault, and 1 for it being Forest. They're going to be down 1 on ratio. I'm not sure exactly why. 3 to 2, okay. 3 to 2, that's why. And -1 to artillery. So it could have been a +7. They're going to get a +5, which is just about as good as you could have wanted. So once again, trying to pry the door open here and get rid of these cavalry to open up the flank. So it's a +4, 3 +5, and then of course the 4. So a very good result. No losses. They were just 1 away from inflicting a loss upon Hatch. But still, it gets the job done, what they were intending to do. So his retreat here is perilous, but it doesn't lose him anything because he is retreating across a road. And then he's out of a ZOI, so it doesn't matter if he's using a road or not. And a Hatch will have to retire across the duck to what he believes is safety, and Forrest will take the hex. Union activate next. Wood will go again. So Wood said, I didn't quite get it last time. He rolls a 3, which is 4 MPs, and that'll be enough to put him here with 3 remaining, which he does not decide to attack. Now, attacking here would have meant a -1 for tactical, a -1 for artillery, and that would have been a -2 attack, which is just not great. It's probably not worth it, but they still possibly could have. So Confederates again, Stuart's going to activate and say, I'm getting the heck out of here. He rolls 6, rolls a 4 to get 6 movement points, and he'll exit that ZOI and just run away and say, this is not my objective, these are not my orders. I am to push across the duck, and fighting here around this church is not going to achieve those objectives. So Stuart wisely pulls away from Wood, who's already used up 2 fatigue, to accomplish this maneuver. Stuart will activate once more. He gets 4 movement points this time, which is enough to threaten one of these fords, whether he comes across at Wallace Mill, he takes Holland's Ford, or Davis Ford. He has options here, and the Union, once again, can't block them all, especially since their only unit in the area is fully exhausted, fully fatigued, and there's nobody else within range. So big hole here has started to open up. Johnson will activate all of his cavalry now, and he says, I've got to get in gear and plug this hole. He gets a massive 14 movement. So Lowe is going to go first and block Ford number 1 around the grist mill. Johnson will then go next and sit on the Holland Ford. Just to close the shortest path, he hopes that for some reason Stuart rolls very low and doesn't get to move very far. So lots of movement there, and he's actually going to concentrate all his forces. Stuart will activate for a 3rd time. He will become exhausted, but he really wants to get across here in case Johnson's able to activate again and make it difficult for him. He wants to get across the duck. He doesn't care if his men are exhausted when it happens. He was okay on his roll as well, and he gets a big 7, so he can move well across the duck. So let's go ahead and zoom out and just give you the tactical situation here. The Union were holding a really strong line here around Columbia. This area heavily fortified with breastworks and well held with the amount of troops they were able to muster. But the Confederates say, all right, we're just going to feint right on around. Lee's corps is massing to the west, which is drawing Schofield's attention, and so Stuart just makes an end run, and he is across the duck, which means now he's going to have to respond by sending troops of his own to protect the wagon trains and to prevent Stuart from getting into Nashville or Murfreesboro. And if you start to pull troops away from here, then there's not enough anymore. So really, it doesn't take much for the Union to fold around Columbia. They just don't quite have enough. If they had one more corps, like the one that comes in reinforcements in Nashville, it wouldn't be unbalanced necessarily. It would just force a battle around Columbia because the Union would have enough to hold. It would probably unbalance, and that the Confederates probably wouldn't have enough, but it would make it interesting. Cheatham's corps now into the fray. They roll a magical 1 for 3 movement points. They have been so slow. Cheatham's boys just inching their way along. Forces bait off the road. Cheatham will go again. This time he gets 8, which is the maximum, which makes him feel a little bit better about things. And now watch here. He steps off the pike because, crucially, he sees an opening. And this is really where the Union made a huge mistake. He's able to assemble the entirety of his corps. So in one fell swoop, he's just lumbering along Cheatham, and his men are just barely making progress. And then, boom, inspiration strikes, and he bolts down towards Columbia. And now, had Wood either just not made this move, had Wood been sitting up here in this hex instead, then this line is full, and they can possibly maneuver around for a full flank on Cheatham. Maybe Cheatham doesn't make this move. Maybe Cheatham decides to come down the middle instead. Who knows? If Stewart still makes his run, maybe Wood pushes up to the Little Bigby Creek, and now there is no good place for him to cross, and he has to attack across the creek. But because he did move and was unable to hit Stewart, maybe if he hits Stewart, that attracts Cheatham down there, or the rest of Stewart Corps moves first, and any number of things could have happened had Wood either been successful with his maneuver or just not made his maneuver. But he was not successful and will basically be the undoing of a lot of the positive progress that the Confederates have made. And really, this comes down to a rules mistake by me of Stanley not being in position, because if Stanley was in position, he would have been with Wood. They most certainly would have had the movement to make an assault, and they would have had the activations to do it. So this really comes down to me with this little rules mistake here. I didn't recognize it in time, otherwise I would have gone back and done something about it. But I don't even recognize it until well on into the future. So he's got his entire corps here assembled, which is remarkable that he's been able to organizationally pull this off and face down Whitaker, who's already the second weakest of this bunch, the weakest division. But all he has to do is roll up one end of the line and the whole thing will fall. Confederates again. Cheatham is going to assault, and he's got Hood with him, so that's useful. So he rolls a 2 here. Cheatham only has a 5, so in order to get all 3, 2 was the minimum he could roll. So that was very fortunate there. It was a risk taking. This was not like it's a clear thing for the Confederates to do. They could have rolled a 4. Now, granted, they would have activated Brown and still been okay for ratio, but it would not have been easy going for them still. So the assault's going to be +2, 1 for assault, 1 because they have Hood. Hood just has to be there. It does not have to be a grand assault. Hood just has to be involved. So 2 for that, 2 for tactical, because it's going to be 4 for Clayburn against 2 of Whitaker. So that's +4, down 1 for artillery. The ratio won't matter because this is doubled to 12, and these guys are like around 20-something, or low 20s. So a +3. The Confederates roll a 3, but the Union crucially rolls a 1, which is going to give them a +5, sorry. Really bad roll there from the Union. If you roll a 3, then things aren't nearly as bad, or even if, there was a lot of room there to roll better than a 1. So a +5 is going to be a very rough, it's still a 1 loss for the Confederates, but it's 2 for the Union. So this is really going to hurt Whitaker and the Fourth Corps. Plus, he's demoralized. So he's routing. He'll route across the river, join up with Wagon Train C. 1 loss for the Union as well, for the Confederates as well, but it's still not quite as bad. So we can look at the losses here right now. It's 4-2. I think this is right. I know I get it right in the end, but I may have missed one and then moved along. But still, before this 2, you're looking at 12 victory points just from the Confederates having lost 4. So they were already in a really good spot. That has kind of dampened it a little bit. Lee's Corps now is going to assemble, maximum of 8 points. All 3 are going to move, and they are going to assemble over here on the western flank. So now they're sensing something. They're saying, okay, maybe this went from we have a mass of Union entrenched units ahead of us to we have a chance to roll up the Union forces and possibly dismiss them on our way to Nashville. They sense a real opportunity, and their tails are up. The Union gets an activation much needed, which Schofield's going to activate both of the remaining major divisions on this side of the river, and he's going to say it is time to withdraw. Thankfully, they get a 7, which is very good. He's going to extradite himself and then make it across the Duck. Schofield will follow, and just like that, what looked like a very formidable Union position has now turned into a hasty retreat with units left behind. Wood and Waters are down there with no support, could possibly be cut off if an assault is made against Ruger in Columbia. So It really all fell apart for the Union there very quickly. Buford will activate now, 9 movement points to surround Waters and keep him from making it to Columbia easily. Once again, they're trying to trap these units down here, keep them from reuniting and shut off a full division. Wood activates now. He's going to come up with movement points remaining and shove Buford out of the way. He loses 2 movement points, though, so Buford does his job successfully and slows down Wood. The only problem is here there's just not a lot of oomph left in the Confederate forces. Here sitting on 3 exhaustion. These guys sitting on 1, but fatigue. But these guys are sitting on 1 fatigue, but they have exhaustion. I really got to get those words straightened out because it can be confusing. They're exhausted, and they don't want to take another fatigue because they could lose that fatigue, the exhaustion, if they only remain on 1 fatigue at the end of the day. Forgot to put the fatigue. Wood now will activate again. He is going to become exhausted tomorrow. He rolls a horrendous 1. And remember, they're getting a +1 to all their movements here because of the enhanced movement. So that has really helped out the Union a lot. But still, a poor roll when he could possibly have made his way across the duck. So Waffle here and French are going to activate on their own. Stewart and Waffle just going to slide their way down the pike. French now. 3 movement points. Stanley's finally going to get into a move. He gets his maximum of 6, which normally would just be 7, but the enhanced movement means 8. So they are fully up their way, and he is going to bring them all ahead. Now, another rules thing here. I was thinking that wagon trains could attack. It doesn't really make sense that they can, but they have strength points. So I was like, forget this. I'm going to send Wilson around Chalmers full flank, and then I'm going to hit them here. But they can't even contribute to flanking. So this is where I realized that Stanley can't be stacked over here. But as you can see, very aggressive with the wagons. It isn't too bad because stacking them together means they're harder to hit. This would be a good ratio for them. But still, I was trying to be very aggressive. 2 movement points for French. Once again, these reinforcements have not been fast enough. Inexcusable, really. Wilson to complete this little flanking maneuver. This is where I realized that Stanley can't stack with the wagons, and so instead Wilson would join the wagons instead of pointlessly trying to create a flank that he can't create. So he's just going to sit with the wagons. I think using cav leaders to usher the wagons along is a really good idea. I saw Patrick Tactics and Tutorials do that in the campaign game they're playing. I can't remember the guy's name that he plays. It's not Kevin, but the guy that he plays against all the time did this with the Union, and I thought it was a great idea. Cheatham's Corps now, they're going to go to full exhaustion, 7 movement points, and they're going to move along right up to Columbia. And they only had 7, but that was 3 to move here, so that leaves them with 4, and then that leaves them with 3, and the other ones had to get in a little bit slower. So maybe I could have attacked there. I don't really know. The fact they were able to get past the roll was pretty incredible. Most of the first one had to take a flip, so bait had to reduce, but everyone else intact. Schofield activates Cox, and he is going to move to Cox. So Wagner's going to remain. He's going to move to Cox and then come down the road in hopes of threatening Chalmers and freeing up the road. Schofield will go again. He's going to exhaust Cox, and he will get around and force the cav retreat out of Chalmers. Did not want to leave Chalmers there with the possibility of digging in. So he does lose 2 movement points, but Schofield will just keep going around. And that's going to open up Wilson to activate the cav and the wagon trains. And they will make their way along. 11 movement points is reduced by half. And they actually should have had 1 more, I think. I think I fixed this in a minute. Yeah, the wagon should have 1 more. And also, I shouldn't have taken this path. It doesn't affect anything, but I don't know why I traced the road down here instead. They should have went up. 11 movement points for Wilson, who is then going to leave the wagons and come down here to face off against Chalmers. He just wants to get up close to him. Now that he has an advantage in size, He wants to get up close to him and just uh, pin him down so he doesn't cause any more trouble. And also kind of pin this area up for Stewart, who is going to be advancing this way. He's got Schofield over here to activate if needed. Schofield again activates all the wagons. Well, I was going to do that. And then I looked up what the rolls would be for exhaustion, and they're ridiculous. So I did not do that. It's a bad idea. Do not try and exhaust the wagons. Johnson's going to activate Capron. Big movement points here. This is a major shifting point for the Union back the other direction as Capron gets 14 movement points. And that gives him literally just enough to get a full flank on Chalmers, the exact amount they needed. Chalmers will now move and say, okay, I see the situation I'm in, I'm out of here. And he'll use his full movement point to just slide out of there. Confederates pass. Waters will go next. 7 movement points. He should not have been able to move into Columbia. I'm just now realizing he might have had enough movement to go here, 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 and here. But normally you can't go this way because it's through a ZOI. Croxton now trying to just kind of wrap things up over here. He's going to run down and try and protect this ford from Forrest coming over and making things difficult because they've got a nice little group of guys over here that Forrest could then kind of wrap up this cav and push his way into this main column. Because as you can see here, there is a bit of separation between the wagons who really don't have any strength and then the actual Union forces. So throwing a wedge between them would be good. The guys up here, the Indiana boys, are going to move. There's no need for them to be up here anymore. They get pretty good movement rolls, but there's no one threatening to cross up here. All the reinforcements are in and no one elected to go on this west side, which was a mistake, I believe. I'll explain my thoughts on that a little bit later. But the Indiana boys continue along. Moore is going to move here. He doesn't really need to stay any longer. Or no, I guess I didn't decide to do that. I decided to move Hammond instead. I remember why. I activated him because I thought I could blow the bridge. But you have to have a 5 strength unit in order to blow the bridge, which is probably why Moore has 4. So they want to blow the bridge, but they couldn't. Hammond will go again, 5 more movement, and he's going to kind of angle his way down towards this bust up with Chalmers. You can kind of see his line of sight towards that direction. Both sides pass. That'll bring us to the end of turn 5. The random event for turn 6 is accelerated Union reinforcements. These events have just been so kind to the Union. Even when rain came, it was probably the best possible time for rain. So it's been very friendly to the Union. That'll bring in Knight, which, I would have preferred it to be a turn. One more reinforcement later, but is what it is. Manpower, they get an additional cavalry, which they're going to stick with Croxton because they expect an onslaught from Forrest. Their reinforcements roll in, nothing. Leader transfer, Confederate arrivals is skipped because they've already run out of theirs, and that will end the 2 turns that I've played. So this is the very wide look at what's going on. What started out with a very strong Union line, it's kind of a self-inflicted wound. Would Stewart have made it around anyways? Probably. It's just impossible to hold. But it's why it's kind of hard with Wood's move. It's like it was a good move to do and to try and knock Stewart out because that prevents the flank. If you can knock Stewart out, I mean, look, if Stewart's guys here march south, they're not going to be there by the end of this turn, which means that Hood and Lee are going to be sat up here. Are they going to waste their activations and just not move this turn? That's a positive, even if they don't attack. If they do attack, it's not guaranteed they're going to be successful. So missing that, which once again comes down to a rules error mostly, of Stanley not being with Wood, it has massive repercussions because he's out of position, doesn't get his man. Stewart's able to sneak away, get across the duck anyways, rendering the positions here useless, even if Hood had not assaulted so successfully across the Little Bigby Creek. Finding a hole in the line, crumpling it, sending Whitaker running after heavy losses. So Lee was hit big time, and I thought at that point, man, this is going to be a quick one. The Confederates are going to just basically crash against the Little Bigby Creek, and this game's going to be over, which would have been interesting. But now that's kind of all out of the window. It's certainly still very heavily in the Union's favor here. Stewart is the only one across. He's exhausted. He has 8. The Union are going to have a little bit of a hard time extricating themselves from Columbia, especially if these early ones go against them. There aren't that many guys actually in Columbia, so I think it's 8 right now with Stanley. So if they're able to punch into Columbia, then Wood's in a really awkward spot. He's going to have to get away somehow, I guess. Um, the flanking kind of gets funky with these river hexes and stuff. So the first activation of turn 6 is going to be massive. And then the wagons are still in a pretty good spot. I think Chalmers is pretty well wrangled, and I'm not too worried about him running away and getting anything done. He's kind of been relegated over there to a pretty insubstantial position. And the rest of the units are coming up slowly. So now you can kind of see Lee might go over here and try and force this westerly cross. Hood may try and smash into Columbia. And Stewart's guys are just going to kind of come in where they can come in. Stewart's just going to run off on his own. I haven't decided if I'm going to go up and target the wagons or if I'm going to go up here and try and slow down these guys somewhere. We'll wait and see. But all in all, very swingy game. I still think the Union have favorability here. I think the biggest missed opportunity for the, not the biggest, but one of the biggest missed opportunities was sending in somebody up here. In the end, it's probably not going to hurt him that much, but I really like this westerly route along the Natchez Trace. It's very hard to defend if you have the right amount of movement, and even with the right amount of movement. Even without it, it's still pretty hard to defend, given there's just not enough units. So then if you've got a group running along this way, you've got a corps running along this way, and then you've got the 3rd Confederate Corps punching down the middle, it's a foot race backwards, and it leaves no time for the Union to get good rolls, set up in a good position, and fight, turn their backs to you, basically, face you. Their backs have to be to you the whole time, otherwise running to Nashville to prevent anyone from getting there first. So, but it just didn't work out. The way the reinforcements came in, I just thought it was better to send them in the way they did. But I do like this northerly route. And we'll see if it hurts them or not. So that's turns 4 and 5. Let me know what you think, as always. Strategy, tactics, rules, mistakes, and that sort of thing. Whether you would have attacked with Wood, whether you would have sent Wood out on this attack against Stanley down here, or if you would have kept him in line, or if you think the Union line there was hopeless anyways, regardless of what would have happened if Hood was pretty much always going to punch through it. Let me know how you would have handled that situation. As always, I appreciate you guys watching. We will see you next time, and appreciate you. Make sure to like and subscribe.